What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to another Friday afternoon live stream. What's going on? What's going on? We got football in less than a week. This time next Friday, for our Friday afternoon live stream, we will be discussing an actual NFL game, Ravens and Chiefs. I am so freaking excited. So excited. So welcome in, everybody. Of course, if you haven't been here before, this is just a general AMA. We're just hanging out, asking some questions, fantasy or whatnot. I did throw up a poll from the back end side here on asking who you guys think I should drop in a dynasty league between Eric Gray and Dylan Labe. So that should be a poll once you go into the live stream and you go into like the comment stuff, that you should see that poll. So that is currently a decision that I have to make in my home dynasty league. We have roster cut downs tomorrow or Sunday. And I already know who my 3 or 4 players are to cut down, but I'm stuck between Eric Gray and Dylan Labe. I don't know I don't have anybody else that I can possibly even consider cutting besides those two. I might try to see if I can explore a trade just to trade somebody for a third or a fourth or something, but currently those are the 2 players that I need, that I'm deciding between cutting. And it's a 50-50 split between the 2 right now. So any help is appreciated on what you guys think on that one. Brian is in the chat. Hype. What's up, Brian? Yam Baggy in the chat as always. Happy Friday. We're a little slow. We're missing some of the regular questions that usually come in. I did start the stream, or I did put up the stream really late. It was like 11:30 or something like that this morning. Like half an hour ago, I put up the stream that we were going live today. So maybe that was partially on me. But if we have any questions or anything, instead of you guys just me trying to kill some time until somebody types a question. I haven't had to do this for a while. People have been generally we start this and there's already like 17 questions in here. So SJE, hola, what's up, my man? ¿Cómo estás? Brian, happy Friday indeed. Starter question just to warm us up here. What is your favorite / hometown NFL team? So I am born and raised and currently live in central Pennsylvania. And so I grew up and am still currently a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. We are where I live in central PA shies slightly closer towards Pittsburgh than it does Philadelphia. I do have Eagles friends. I do have a bunch of Eagles friends, but I have just as many Steelers friends as well. And I grew up on the Steelers side of it. Penn State, of course, that's what those 2 right there, Godwin, Dotson. I got the Saquon Barkley, right there, Saquon Barkley, Nittany Lion thing going on. I'm a Pirates fan. That's Andrew McCutchen up there at the very top. Andrew McCutchen sitting next to Yugi Moto. So Pens fan, of course. Not a Pitt Panther fan though, but has to be Penn State. SJE Broncos fan here, becoming a closet Lions fan. Dude, the Lions have been kind of like my NFC team for a while. When I was growing up, I was a big time Matthew Stafford fan. Obviously Megatron was fantastic too. Loved Megatron. Golden Tate went there. It's not up currently. I have a signed Lions mini helmet of Golden Tate. So I was kind of like a closet Lions fan as well. They were kind of like my quote unquote NFC team. Just because I like their color blue. The Lions logo is pretty sick. Matthew Stafford, Megatron, Golden Tate. Reggie Bush was fun there for a few years. Theo Riddick was a fun, like, sleeper kind of guy. So yeah, I agree with you on being a closet Lions fan. And now it's just super fun. Now they're one of the best teams in the league, and it's just super fun to be a Lions fan just in general. So I root for the Lions as often as I possibly can. But Steelers are number 1, unfortunately, now. It was really fun growing up. Trust me, it was really, really fun growing up, but now it's not so fun. All right, Cameron. Redraft, Superflex, 12 by 10, 4-point per touchdown, PPR, 1.5 tight end premium. Draft tonight out of the 11th slot. What is the worst QB1 to take that won't destroy my chances of winning? At my spot, looking at wide receiver, running back, what would be your strategies? Yeah, so at the 11th pick, I would basically be looking to try to come away with two of Saquon, JT, AJ Brown, Kyron, Puka. If you can get like two of those five guys, I think that you are really, really set. Obviously, if somebody, if like Justin, if your home league hates Justin Jefferson and he falls to the 111, fantastic. If Jamar Chase falls to the 111, fantastic. If Bijan or Brees fall to the 111, fantastic. I'm not expecting any of that to happen, but I obviously would take all of those guys um, over the five players that I just named. But if you can grab any of those two, I think that would be a fantastic way to start your draft. The worst QB1, I think. Um, I'm a big Kyler Murray fan, of course, but I think you could even go lower than that if you're feeling like you're up to it. Dak Prescott, I think, is pretty solid. Um, I'm willing to go for Jaden Daniels. I think that he's going to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year. The rushing ability is just going to be fantastic. Um, and that's going to be really his main fantasy driver. So I'm willing to go Jaden Daniels. Jared Goff is another one I think that kind of goes around Jaden Daniels too. And I'm honestly even willing to, if I miss out on all of those guys, Trevor Lawrence, I think, is like probably the worst QB1 that I would personally feel comfortable with as like a more every week starter. Tua is probably in there too, but I'm a big fan of the Jaguars offense as a whole this year. So I like Trevor Lawrence as kind of like a bounce back candidate to get back to where he was in 2022. From that, I'm a Christian Kirk fan, Brian Thomas Jr. fan, Travis Etienne fan. But most of that just stems from I'm confident in Trevor Lawrence kind of bouncing back. So that would probably be my answer for worst QB1 that won't destroy your chances of winning. So, yep. Good luck tonight, Cameron. I have one of my redrafts is tomorrow, and then my other one is Sunday. So it's that time of season, baby. It's that time of year. It's going to be a fun weekend, Labor Day weekend. Our one quarterback league hates quarterbacks. May wasn't even drafted, trying to pick up with Fab and throw on Taxi. Wow. Drake May wasn't drafted in your rookie draft? I wouldn't toss a pretty penny on him, but I would definitely pick him up and throw him on the taxi squad for sure, just to see what happens. It's never a bad thing just to have a rookie quarterback sitting on taxi. And not going to say he becomes CJ Stroud, but we have seen many quarterbacks that the community was not necessarily in love with or in not love with their situation that have surprised, like kind of like CJ Stroud, but Justin Herbert maybe is another good example. He was a popular comp for Drake May as a prospect too. So there it is. I'm with it. Throw him on a taxi. Just see what happens. P to the R. I haven't had neither of these. I actually don't visit Philadelphia a whole lot. I think Philadelphia is kind of gross and I don't like it. So I have not actually been to Philadelphia in probably over a decade, and I have not eaten a Philly cheesesteak from either of these two places. Sorry. I just have no interest in going to Philly. Pittsburgh is exponentially better of a city. And I like Permane Brothers way better. I can give you some other spots in Pittsburgh that are fantastic too. Pittsburgh, many greater signs. Philadelphia. Brian, as a Browns fan, gross, but also I'll be in Pittsburgh in a week or two. Lions are easily my NFC favorite. Lake Erie Bros. Nice. I apologize that you're a Browns fan. I apologize for everything that Ben Roethlisberger did to you over the past 20 years. Sorry, not sorry. JJ Watt greater than Myles Garrett. Still, though, just being able to get Drake May would be fantastic for that. I love that. Toronto Dave Friday AMA, baby. Let's go. Let's go. Should I stash Jonathan Brooks in one of my IR spots or just put him on my taxi squad? Great question, Whackman. I think this depends on if you are competing or not. If you are not competing this year, then you should put him on your taxi squad. And I know that there are like the weird like sleeper rules, or if you decide your rookie drafts based on maximum points for, then they will count towards the taxi squad will count towards your max point for. I don't like that. I think that's kind of like a dumb rule that sleeper just doesn't give you the ability to change, because I think the whole point of a taxi squad is to have it be a separate kind of little thing away from your active roster. So having max points for points from your taxi squad count towards that, I think is kind of dumb and defeats the purpose of having a taxi squad. So why not just have an extra 5 bench spots? So depending on if your league is like that or not, it could be beneficial to throw them on the taxi squad if you are not competing this year, and if your league doesn't determine rookie draft order by that max points for on sleeper. Um, Other than that, you could probably just throw them on IR, especially as a contender. You could just throw him on IR. It probably ultimately doesn't really matter because you have the ability to call him up from either one of them. But I think that if you're not really looking to compete this year, I would just toss him on the taxi squad. If you are trying to be competitive this year, or you think that you're going to be able to start Jonathan Brooks at multiple points during the year, maybe over the second half of the season, then I would just probably just throw him on IR and let him just sit there until he comes back hopefully in week 5, if he's going to stay on the pup, hopefully in week 5. Brian, I just saw your question on recommendations for a quick dinner in Pittsburgh. I'm trying to remember what the spot, I'm trying to remember what it was called that we went there. That's why I was Googling. I was trying to look it up. Because if I see the name of it, I'll know it. It was up by the Duquesne incline. I don't remember. The Foundry is really good. As I'm scrolling through lists of the list of spots to try to find where this place was that was so freaking good. The Foundry was really good. They got rid of 36 Grill was phenomenal. That was Jerome Bettis's spot. Man, every single time we went to Pittsburgh, I always wanted to try to go over there. I'm trying to look this up on the map. This is so annoying. Where this? Oh, wait. I can't find it. This is annoying. Okay, I need to think on this, or I might even text my wife to see if she remembers where this place was, but it was so freaking good. We go to this is kind of a chalky pick, but we go to the Cheesecake Factory a lot there in Pittsburgh. There's two spots. There's two cheesecake factories. One's in like North Pittsburgh, and then one's kind of like as you come in from Pittsburgh from the Squirrel Hill Tunnel. It's down in there. Both are really good, but Cheesecake Factory is kind of chainy. But I would recommend that. There was another. I can't remember. Again, I'm terrible at like these restaurant names, especially whenever I don't go to them all that much. And I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, we should go to that place. What was that place? There is a really good hibachi grill up in there too, if you're looking for that. Sorry, that was probably like I did not give you like any recommendations whatsoever, Brian. I'm so sorry. But hopefully I can help better with this. How interested are you in Baker Mayfield as an extra quarterback in Superflex? What would you be willing to give up for him? I think he might be a value / have a Goff-like career. I think that Baker Mayfield is a solid QB3. So that's kind of like the question here is as an extra quarterback, non-starter in Superflex, I think that he is a solid QB3. I would like to not pay a first-round pick for him, especially I don't really want to pay a first-round pick for any quarterback that I'm not like actively going to be starting. Especially if you have like two really top-end guys to where Baker isn't even like a streamable option, then I don't really want to pay a first. I'd be willing to if I had to, but I just at that point I would try to see if I could just find a different QB3 for cheaper. See if you can buy Stafford for cheaper or Rodgers for cheaper or I'd rather pay a first for JJ McCarthy and then try to buy somebody else for a second or two, or another future first, and try to buy somebody like that, rather than just pay a first for Baker Mayfield. Um, I think that he's going to be solid. I think that he's all right. Obviously, throwing to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin is going to be great. Rashad White and Bucky Irving out of the backfield. I'm a little concerned about this offense without Dave Canales. I think that Kubiak is going to be solid, but I just don't think that he's going to live up to the Dave Canales offense. Um, so I'm a little concerned about just overall regression, but I think that's what makes him a really good QB3. So yeah, I would be willing to pay a first. I'd ideally like to pay less than a first. Cheesecake Factory is not really all that quick. No, not really. But the nice thing about where the one Cheesecake Factory is that it's kind of like out of the way a little bit. So you kind of depending on which direction you're trying to go to. I don't really know if you're coming from like the Ohio area. I'm not really sure which one would be better for you. But I know we come from into Pittsburgh from the east. So there's that one Cheesecake Factory right there from Squirrel Hill that you can just hop right off on. And it's kind of like out of the way. And there's not a lot of traffic down there. So it's like quick in and out for like a city dinner, not so much for like a sit down dinner. I understand that point, but it's quick to get in and out of. Goku is in the chat. Thoughts on P. Ryan for this year, and what is Ricky's value now that Ayuk re-signed? So I'm actually pretty interested in Samaje P. Ryan. He has the ability to be in that Jarrett McKinnon kind of role, and that does kind of hurt Isaiah Pacheco as well. But I also just don't think that Samaje P. Ryan is all that good. I think that he's just been kind of given these roles out of, I don't want to say necessity, but just out of like, it feels like coaches just like him more than what I think that they should, because I don't really think that he's all that good. But I think that he has the ability to be, a flexible kind of player in the right circumstances. Obviously, being in the Kansas City Chiefs offense is going to be great. Scoring touchdowns is an upside shot for him in a much better offense than what he had in Denver. So I think he was actually included in a waiver wire video that's going to be dropping early next week, because he was only rostered in like 75 or 80% of MFL leagues that I pulled from, out of like 1,700 leagues. He was rostered in like 70 to 80% of them. So if he's on waivers, that's fantastic, especially if somebody dropped him because he got cut by the Broncos and now you can pick him up for him being in KC. I think that he should definitely be rostered, and he has upside to be a kind of RB3 and be the handcuff to Isaiah Pacheco, but I'm not like super excited about it. As for Ricky Pearsall, now that Ayuk has re-signed, honestly, I've been under the assumption that Brandon Ayuk was going to stay on this team the entire summer. I think it was stupid that they even tried to consider trading him or not re-signing him or anything like that. And I honestly thought that the Ricky Pearsall pick was a massive overvalue on Pearsall himself. So I've been lower on Ricky Pearsall. I had him as like a mid super flex second round pick, just because he had the first round draft capital. But I much preferred, Leggett and Polk and McConkey, even like Adonai. I was kind of more in on Adonai than I was Ricky Pearsall. I think you're just kind of waiting for Deebo Samuel to leave instead of, now obviously Brandon Ayuk is there for 4 years. You're waiting for Deebo to leave. And Ricky's also hurt right now too. So it's a mid second is fine, but I'm not like actively trying to go out and buy him just because I wasn't that in on him to begin with going into the NFL draft. Then I thought that the draft pick was an overvaluation for his talent. And I assumed that Brandon Ayuk was going to be there this whole time. So a mid second, but I'm not actively trying to buy him. And now's probably not a good time to sell him either. You need to wait for him to actually get on the field and get healthy, and not off the back of the Brandon Ayuk news. Thank you. I don't know if I don't see another question in here, but thank you. Do you have any concerns about Waddle and his mysterious injury? Um, I did have some concerns, but then I've seen that there are like Doctor Twitter analysts like Jeff Mueller and stuff and Jesse Morse. They have come out and said that the most likely situation is that it was a calf strain because he was out there running with like a compression sleeve on his leg, and that based on where he's at right now, they don't have all that much concern for it. I didn't notice that Jeff mentioned about possible re-aggravation over the first month of the NFL season, and so he's at a higher risk for that. And if he does re-aggravate, then that could be a more long-term issue for the entire 2024 season. I'm not super worried about it right now, especially from a dynasty standpoint. I wouldn't be worried about the Waddle injury to like sell him. Uh, from a redraft standpoint, I do think that it's a little bit more concerning. I think that you could potentially get away with moving him now for somebody like a DK Metcalf, or maybe you can get like Pickens plus, or maybe you can buy Brandon Ayuk now, or you know, go get Nico Collins or somebody like from a redraft standpoint. I think I'd be more willing to move off of Jalen Waddle. But ultimately, like out of from a 1 to 10, my concern right now, from what I've seen from people on Twitter who are medical doctors and physical therapists, my concern is about at a 2 out of 10 for Waddle, based on what I've seen from their concerns. Um, so as long as hopefully he doesn't re-aggravate it while actually playing in season in September, that would be ideal. But then he should be fine, hopefully. Cryptunes, best place to find a dynasty league to join. Great question. So I always recommend safe leagues. I don't know if they have any more leagues that you can join right now. The hard part is finding a dynasty league that's going to have a startup now, with the season being less than a week away. But safe leagues would be one. FFPC would be another one if you have a higher budget. I think that their minimum dues are $100. So if you have like a higher budget for that, then FFPC would be another good one. That kind of removes you from joining some random internet league where you're sending money via PayPal or Venmo to some random guy that you just met. Always do league safe for league dues. But those two are good, like fantasy platforms that they themselves will host dynasty leagues. We have dynasty leagues that or we have people that would be forming dynasty leagues in our forum, the DLF forum, the DLF Discord. I think BDGE's Discord has a channel for creating dynasty leagues too. Paul mentioned Sleeper in here. I'm not familiar. Does Sleeper do like you can just join a league? I don't play on Sleeper, so I have no idea if they do. But if they do, then that would work. But then that's where you kind of get into like you're possibly just trying to find randos on the internet that you're just sending money to. Cool. So Sleeper would be a good one then. I can't speak to if the leagues are actually good or not, but if they do that, then that would be probably the number one place I would go to, especially if you don't have like the budget for FFPC or anything like that. But yes, always, 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 always use League Safe and don't just Venmo somebody. That's how I've heard way too many horror stories, and especially horror stories from even people that I know, like in my like everyday life, almost in real life. I've heard some horror stories of people, and then I've heard even worse horror stories from people on the internet and stuff. Always League Safe. But Paul picked up an orphan in a 10-team league. Quarterback ranked last, running back ranked 8th, wide receiver 4th, but Cup is the best one that you have. What approach would you take in this rebuild to 2025 firsts? I would basically be trying to, man, your wide receivers are ranked 4th, but Cup is the best that you have. Interesting. I would be aiming for 2026 first round picks. Any running backs that you have that in season have any sort of production, I'd be trying to sell them immediately for 2026 picks. I'd be trying to, obviously, I think you could sell Cup now. His value is kind of climbed, but if you want to wait in season just to see him actually produce, and if he gets back to not even back to 2021 Cup, but just back to being like a wide receiver 1 Cup, you could probably get more for him. I'd go the way that I would try to attack this is trying to take dart throw shots on quarterbacks, and see if some of them actually hit. Because I like to, when I rebuild, I like in a super flex league, I like to attack the quarterback position first. They have the most longevity and they have the highest value, of course, from a positional standpoint in the league. So usually I like to grab these quarterbacks that I can like cross that position off and be like, all right, this is done. That's good. Wide receivers, you're kind of also doing maybe simultaneously as well if you get good deals on them. But you're taking dart throws and you're hoping you're trying to go buy Drake May for cheap. You're trying to go buy JJ McCarthy right now. Maybe you take the shot on like a Justin Fields or something if you can get him now for like a third, and then you can sell him for a second later. I don't know if that's possible, but that's like kind of the moves that you're trying to do is aim aim for players that have a bunch of risk but also a bunch of upside, or a lot of that risk is unknown because they're rookies. um it feels like pretty generic advice, but that's really the way that you have to go about it, especially at the quarterback position. Is you can't just go up and just instantaneously go buy Kyler Murray or CJ Stroud or Joe Burrow or even Trevor Lawrence. You got to dig for these guys that are, you got to go hit on Bryce Young, you got to hit on Drake May, you got to try to buy JJ McCarthy low. You got to take the shot on Will Levis. Like that's how you do it at the quarterback position. And then hopefully, you do the same thing with the wide receivers. Maybe you hit on both of your 2025 draft picks. You're able to shed some age for more draft picks. That's kind of like the rebuild process and how I would attack that, just in general. Christian, London or Ayuk in a half PPR. Falcons fan with Ayuk looking to possibly trade for him. In a dynasty league, I would take Ayuk over London. It's pretty close though. Like I wouldn't do this like one for one. There really isn't a reason to. Uh, but if you get anything attached, like if that Falcons fan is like, man, I really want to go get Drake London right now. If you can get Ayuk plus something, doesn't even have to be a big something. Like it doesn't even have to be a second, but anything just to kind of make it worth your while to hit the accept button on that. Um, is what I would be trying to do. I wish that this could have been done 2 days ago, because then you probably most definitely could have gotten something on top, because Ayuk was still sitting out with the possibility that he gets traded. Um, but yeah, now that we know that he's in San Fran for the next 4 years, and London is still a possible breakout in Atlanta for the next 3 years, with his 5th-year option, I would still take Ayuk over Drake London. But I wouldn't make that trade just one for one just to do it. I would still hold on to London and either try to upgrade him substantially and not kind of side tier, or get something on top of Ayuk to just make it worth your while. Brian, what do you expect potential outcomes are for Carson Steele and Dylan Labe for this season? Trying to hype up some of my end of bench. So Labe, I have hope for, but I tossed him in. That's why I'm glad to see that people are voting on the poll that I have on there. So that poll is from, I have a decision to make in the Dynasty League of cutting one of those two. There's nobody else that's even in consideration for who to cut. It's literally just those two. And everybody's telling me to cut Eric Gray, and that's kind of where I was leading. And I was leaning towards cutting Eric Gray over Labe, because I think that Labe has I don't want to say a decent chance, but I think that he has an upside shot on potentially being the RB1 for the Raiders by the end of the year. He's currently the RB4, but that's behind like Amir Abdullah, who's just like the third down back. I think Alexander Madison is not good. I don't even think Zamir White is all that great. So I think Dylan Labe has an upside shot on being like a Ty Chandler this year, so to speak, kind of like to compare Chandler with Madison last year in a kind of a similar situation. I think Labe has the ability to be like a Ty Chandler, which that might just mean that he's kind of like a perennial handcuff, like how Zamir White has been with Josh Jacobs for the past few years. But I think that he has that upside shot. Carson Steele, I feel like, is kind of in the same boat. The Samaje Perine acquisition kind of really just, took the wind out of his sails for that. But he showed really well in training camp and preseason. He has the potential to be a goal line guy, maybe a pass catcher. Maybe he gets in on different personnel sets because he's kind of like a fullback, but not really a fullback. So I think that he has some upside. I think that Dylan Labe, though, has more annual upside, like year over year, then Steele. I think Steele is just like a really fun name right now. Um, but you know, he has value, and I think that that's worth it. So, um, that's kind of where I'm at. I think that they're both just worth being rostered. But I have more hope for Dylan Labe than I do Carson Steele, but Steele is still interesting. Scribbles, what's your value of tight end position to you in a 10 team and a two? Man, I just completely misread everything. Start over. What is the value of tight end position to you in a 2 tight end 14 team league? Uh Massive. um so you have to start 2 tight ends every single week. So there are 28 started tight ends. That is insane. So I would do everything in my power to have 2 top 12 guys that I can just set it and forget it. And then if you got a really solid tight end 3, I would basically treat it almost like a super flex. Um, like how quarterbacks are in super flex. Obviously, I wouldn't say to go draft Sam Laporta over, Lamar Jackson just because of the start 2 tight end, but like that's kind of essentially how you have to look at it, is that a lot of the top tier tight ends are more valuable because of their positional advantage is exponentially greater because every single team is starting multiple guys now. You're not comparing Travis Kelsey and Mark Andrews versus the tight end 12, like a Cole Kmet or somebody like that. You're now comparing those two guys versus, like a Chiga Conquo or a Gerald Everett or a Cade Otten, because those guys are getting started every week too, easily. And even worse tight ends than that are getting started. Like Noah Fant is getting started, So having 2 of those elite tight ends would be monumentally advantageous to you because you have 2 of those guys most likely against people that are starting multiples of the Cade Ottens and the Noah Fants and the Tucker Crafts of the world. Um, so they are massively, massively much more valuable. Almost like double. I would say double the value that they normally have. So that's I almost don't want to play in that league. That league is dumb. I hate start 2 tight end anyway. But in a 14 team league, that's stupid. Sorry. Uh, Peter, how's it going, man? Thanks for the great content. Thank you. Would you trade Kirk for Brian Thomas Jr., full PPR, 3 wide receiver, 2 flex options, 12-team league? Dynasty, absolutely. I don't think this is Dynasty. At least I hope it's not Dynasty, because I would absolutely take Brian Thomas Jr. over Kirk in Dynasty. In a regular redraft, I probably would keep Christian Kirk, but it's pretty close. I don't think the difference between the 2 of them is all that massive, but Kirk, it is Dynasty. Then I'm taking Brian Thomas Jr. Yes. Yes, I am. That makes that way easier, that I don't feel like I have to explain that one. Because BTJ's upside is massive. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year that BTJ outscored Christian Kirk. So that's why I'm interested in him in a redraft standpoint. But from a dynasty standpoint, you get like a 6-year age difference, first round draft capital, upside wide receiver one, like X wide receiver one. Give me BTJ. Scribbles, in a dynasty league, Gibbs or Kenneth Walker and Tank Dell? Oh, oh my gosh. Gibbs or Kenneth Walker and Tank Dell? I think at the end of the day, I just want Jahmyr Gibbs, but I completely understand this from the other side. So how many starters are in this dynasty league? Because that's probably something that would actually sway my decision on this pretty significantly. If this is like a start 8, even start 9, I would probably just take Jahmyr Gibbs. But if it's anything more than that, then I would take Kenneth Walker and Tank Dell. Um, so even like if it's a start 8, I'm definitely taking Gibbs. Start 9 is where I start to think about it more. But I probably still would take Gibbs. Start 10 or 11, I would take Kenneth Walker and Tank Dell. That's probably the actual that's my final answer for that. Mark, in every dynasty, everyone wants the young and good players. So, who are some underrated players that can invest in that won't cost a lot to fill a wide receiver 2 spot? Flowers, Adams, question mark. Um, Christian Kirk is actually a great example of that. But cheap guys to fill your wide receiver 2 spot. Um, I'm talking like when in my mind, cheap is anything less than a first round pick. If I can get like a quality player for less than a first round pick, that's a win in my book. So Christian Kirk is that for me. I would look at if you can get Brian Thomas Jr. for that too, that would be fantastic, by the way. Um, Deontay Johnson is another one. Um, if you want like a really, really cheap, he's not a wide receiver too, but like a really, really cheap, just dart throw shot on it. I'm a big fan of Josh Palmer this year. And I know John Paulson is a big Curtis Samuel fan. To pick a name out of that Buffalo Bills hat, it's Curtis Samuel for him. So those two guys are really, really cheap. They're probably not going to fill your wide receiver 2 spot, but if you're just looking for some extra guys, those are it. But as to fill the actual wide receiver 2, if you can get Rashee Rice for less than a first, I'm doing that. I would pay a first for Rashee Rice, but if you can get him for less than a first, I would do it. If you Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas Jr., Deontay Johnson are great names. Amari Cooper, even still, T. Higgins right now, I think still is relatively cheap to where he should be. And I would rather have T. Higgins than Zay Flowers. And you might get T. Higgins for less than Zay Flowers. So that works. George Pickens is another one that I would rather have him than Zay Flowers. You can take the upside shot on Christian Watson. I wouldn't mind that. You can definitely get him for less than a first. And Chris Godwin and Terry McLaurin would be the last two that I would mention. Mooney's not bad too. Mooney, I would throw Mooney in the Palmer Samuel range of guys. I'd rather have Palmer and Samuel than Mooney, but Mooney, I would toss him into there as like super cheap depth possible wide receiver 3 or flex guy. Sutton wouldn't be bad either. I don't think. Just from like a volume standpoint, as like the wide receiver 1 in Denver, I don't think Sutton's all that bad either. Ridley might not be bad too. That was a good handful of names. So hopefully you find somebody out of that, Mark, that you can go and acquire 1 or 2 of those guys for cheaper than a first. A couple of those names I gave you, I would pay a first for, like Rice and Pickens and Higgins. But if you don't have to pay a first for them, or you can get somebody else cheaper, then I would do that. All right. What are your thoughts on Drake May and JJ McCarthy in the long run? I've drafted these 2 rookies paired with 2 veterans in Superflex and drafted elite receivers. I love it, honestly. I think that Drake May and JJ McCarthy are like the perfect stash quarterbacks in Superflex because they offer the ability to be very good down the road, but they don't have a lot of value right now because people don't like the situation for Drake May. And obviously, JJ McCarthy isn't playing this year. So I think that having the upside shot on both of them as your QB3 or even your QB4 in McCarthy's instance, because I think as like a contender, obviously you might want to keep your first round pick for other things like in season that come up as a contender. But if you're like a surefire massive contender that you're like, I just have this first round pick, I could get something to fill in for like a second if I needed to. Getting JJ McCarthy for a first, I think would be phenomenal because I think that I would argue that he's probably at right now better than any quarterback in next year's class. Obviously, that might sound crazy considering what Shedeur Sanders is doing yesterday, but they played like an FCF team, so I'm not using an FCF's team in week 1 as a reason why Shedeur Sanders is like phenomenal. He was doing the same stuff last year, but McCarthy might be at this point right now a better quarterback and prospect than any quarterback in the 2025 class. And if you're trading your contenders late first for him, that ends up being 110, 111, 112, ideally. You are not going to get a quarterback anywhere near the caliber of JJ McCarthy in next year's class at that draft spot. So I think that that's like a good investment if you're a contender to continue to build towards the future and keep your team competitive longer. Drake May, I think that offers you the same upside. You're definitely going to have to pay a first for Drake May. You might not have to for McCarthy, but I'd be willing to. But that's kind of like the main difference because Drake May is playing, or at least will play this year. Brissett's the starter to start, um, uh, but yeah, those I love it. I think Will Levis is in this category. Um, Paul mentioned another one in Bryce Young. I think that he's another one in this category of just like these upside QB threes that if they hit could be massive for you in terms of now that they are expendable is the wrong word, but it kind of is the right word in this circumstance. They are expendable that you could then trade for a profit to help your team in a different position. It makes a quarterback above them possibly expendable that you could get even more for a higher tiered quarterback, and then you keep that other quarterback that has hit. Or just having if you end up having 3 top 15 guys, then somebody else in your league doesn't have a top 15 guy. So there is that too. But it just increases the value of your roster if having these guys and they do hit is insane. And I think they're all really good bets. May McCarthy, Bo Nix, Bryce Young, Will Levis, I think are all phenomenal bets for first round picks right now. Oh, I read this backwards. I'm sorry, Christian. So you need some. It's the same advice but flipped. So you currently have Ayuk. I would rather have Ayuk than London, but in order to make this deal, you would need to have something on top of London to move Ayuk. I read it as the opposite way that you were trading uh, London to a Falcons fan, but you are the Falcons fan that wants Drake London. But I would rather have Ayuk than London in Dynasty, and I would need something with London to make the deal. Yeah, dude, pairing BTJ with Trevor would be phenomenal. All right. Rudy, should I trade Kamara and Diggs or Kamara and Cooper for ETN, or is that an overpay? I would do Kamara and Diggs for ETN easily. I think the Kamara Cooper one is equal value, but I would rather have Cooper than Diggs. I'm just not super high on Diggs, and I think what Kamara did last year was great for fantasy, but it was also kind of scary from an efficiency and longevity standpoint. I'm a huge Travis Etienne fan. I would trade Kamara and Diggs for Etienne, and I don't think that that's an overpay. Especially just just for 2024, you are trading like a 4th and 5th round pick for an extra second. I would just give me the better player, and then you can fill in Diggs later on. That's the way I view it. Brotherhood traded for Gibbs 25 third, Jalen Polk 20. Whoa. We're back. All right. Traded for Gibbs and a third for 2 firsts and Jalen Polk. Is that too much? I don't think it was too much. I feel like this is an even trade on both sides. I don't know if I would have done this trade on either side. Like this is one of those trades where it just feels like I don't know if I would have done. I would have just kept. I feel like I would have just kept whichever side I had. If I had to pick a side, I would take Jahmyr Gibbs. But also I like Jalen Polk. I like the upside shot on him. But if I did have to pick a side, I would take Jahmyr Gibbs. But this just feels like a trade that whatever side I had, I probably would have kept that side and found a different way to use those firsts, or sold Jahmyr Gibbs for something different than first round picks, unless you are in like a massive teardown rebuild. Which you got Jahmyr Gibbs. So that's the side that at the end of the day that I would still take. And I'm assuming that you're competing this year. So you just toss 2 first round picks out and bada bing, bada boom, you're good. So if this pushes you towards the championship, then you are not wrong. Then go win the championship. That's the final answer. Daniel, 10 team start 9, 1 quarterback, non-tight end premium, traded away Chase for Laporta, Flowers, and a projected early first. Longtime listener, first time commenting. Love the work and content you do. Cheers. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for coming in and commenting for the first time. Let me mentally dissect this trade real quick while I rehydrate. Chase for Laporta, Flowers, and an early first. I think I want the Jamar Chase side on this. It's not a bad trade down. I think what hurts the Laporta side for me is I'm not a huge Zay Flowers fan. Um, Laporta is nice in a non-tight end premium. Obviously, he's like the tight end one, obviously, but he doesn't feel like all that different from a bunch of other tight ends. And then hopefully the first is early, ideally. Um, if it's not or shies anywhere more towards um, a mid first in a one quarterback league, that could hurt you. But if this ends up being like by this time next year, if we look at this and you just told me that you just traded away Chase for Laporta, Flowers, and one of Luther Burden or Tet McMillan, I feel like that would probably end up being a win. But if it's not one of those two rookies, at least as of right now, being that it's a one quarterback league and an early pick, I don't know. We don't have enough information to really sort out who like pick 3 through 6 is going to be. Um, so that it could be a phenomenal pick, or it could just kind of be like that could be like where the tier down is after 1 and 2. If you get 3 or 4, that could feel like a tier down. I think at the end of the day, I still just wanted Jamar Chase, especially since it's a start 9. But I don't think it's a bad deal, especially like I said, if you get Burden or Tet McMillan, that would be phenomenal. So I understand it on both sides. I think like the Gibbs one just before this, I think if I had to pick a side, I would take Jahmyr Gibbs. I would take Jamar Chase. But I don't mind the other side either. I feel like me personally, I would have tried to go about it a different way. I'm just not a huge fan of those players. And you're banking on that first being early, like early for sure. And that just feels like a lot of risk for a top. I mean, Chase in this format is a top 4 asset. So that's why it was a little iffy for me, but I don't mind it at the end of the day. Half PPR, Josh Jacobs or Alvin Kamara for a 3rd round pick, Najee Harris or David Montgomery or Zamir White for a 6th round pick, never Zamir White. So we will be taking Josh Jacobs and David Montgomery. Huge Josh Jacobs fans, especially now with the AJ Dillon IR news. Love David Montgomery. He is the best handcuff running back in the league, so to speak, because he gives you the ability to be an RB2, but then he's going to be a top 5 running back when/if Jahmyr Gibbs is out. So Jacobs and David Montgomery pretty easily here for me for both sides. Matt, hey Addison, would you trade Tua for JJ McCarthy and Bryce in a rebuild? And what would you add onto Tua for the trade? It is super flex. So yes, I would. This is an excellent way to break up one of your assets for 2 other assets that both have the ability to gain a bunch of value. So I do like doing this. At the end of the day, I would add like a second to the Tua side if you needed to. I would not add a first, especially if you're rebuilding and it's your first. I would definitely not do that. But I'd be willing to add your rebuild second if it's like 203, 204, 202, 201. That was a terrible order for that. Anywhere 201 to 204, I would be willing to add that first or add that second next year with Tua. Or if it's like a 26 second, that's even better. But yeah, I would do that. And hopefully Bryce hits this year and then McCarthy hits next year. Mr. Moore, are you okay with losing a bit of value in a trade to win a title? I guess this is the give Olave and a 3rd for Cooper Kupp. So no. So actually, funny story about this one. For the past 2 years, I have posted a video prior to the start of the NFL season telling people exactly not to do this very thing that you are about to do. Because I did it twice and neither time worked out for me. And then my team was like, the value of my team was terrible. And I was literally sitting here half an hour before the stream started thinking to myself, should I post that video again? Or is it too redundant? People already know that. They've seen that video. People who've been watching the channel for the past couple of years have seen that video every year at this exact same time. And it's boring. And is it really information that people need to know? So that's actually hilarious that you are asking me this. And this is now making me want to actually post that video, because no, I would never do this. I've done this twice. It didn't work out either time. We overvalue how much one player affects our starting lineup. Because at the very end of the day, one start to sit decision does not matter for like 90% to 95% of your actual uh, matchups, weekly matchups. Um, so Olave is vastly more valuable in Dynasty than Cooper Kupp, let alone the fact that you are adding to Chris Olave to go get Cooper Kupp. I'm also on board with betting that Cooper Kupp returns to elite wide receiver one form, or at least maybe not elite wide receiver one form, a la like 2021 or 2022, but fantasy wide receiver one. I think that Cooper Kupp will also do that as well. And I'm down on Chris Olave to where I don't think that he's going to do that. So from a production standpoint, I would agree. For 2024, I think Cooper Kupp is going to be better than Chris Olave, but that's not baking in dynasty value. That's also not baking in the fact that the difference between Kupp and Olave on a weekly basis may not matter for you throughout the entire course of the year. And you're especially making that bet now, at the start of before week one starts, but essentially you're making that bet now in week one to say that your team is even competitive enough to do this. And it might be. I have no idea what your roster looks like. But fantasy football is weird. NFL is weird. Life in general is just weird. And by the end of September, one of your running backs could have torn their ACL. They're out for the year. The other wide receiver has a high ankle sprain. He's out for 6 weeks. And what you thought was a super contending roster, that ended up being like 2-0 to start the year, is now in week 8 and you are 3-5, and you're like, well, crap, I much rather would have had Olave now on this team than Cooper Kupp. So that's like a really dark and gloomy outlook on this, but that is really like what actually happens. And what I'm like terrified of. Because again, I did this twice. I did this 2 years in a row on the same team, same league, and neither move I made ended up actually helping my team. Every single matchup that I did in 2020, I traded CeeDee Lamb for Keenan Allen. CeeDee Lamb was averaging less than 10 PPR points per game. Keenan Allen was on a massive breakout with Justin Herbert that year. He was averaging like 18 points per game. So that was an 8-point per game difference. And every single game that I won with Keenan Allen, I would have also won with CeeDee Lamb. And the one game that I lost with Keenan Allen, I would have also lost with CeeDee Lamb. And to put the cherry on top, Keenan Allen didn't even play in the championship week that year. I had to start Jalen Guyton. So that killed me. And obviously, you'd much rather have CeeDee Lamb for the past 3 years than you would have Keenan Allen from a dynasty standpoint. Following year, I did the exact same thing. Derrick Henry got hurt in week 10 after being on pace for 2,000 yards. I traded him for Darrell Henderson, who at the time, I know that sounds icky now, but at the time, Darrell Henderson was the RB11, averaging 16.5 fantasy points per game. Every single game that I won with Darrell Henderson, I would have also won had I started Derrick Henry and he was injured with 0 points. And every single game that I lost with Darrell Henderson, I obviously would have lost with Derrick Henry. And another cherry on top, Darrell Henderson that year also did not play in the championship. So 2 years in a row, did this exact thing, did not work out for me. And that is why I actively tell people not to do this. So no, I would not do this. I'm sorry. I feel like I just like vented all of that towards you, and I did not want that to sound like I was attacking you at all, Mr. Mole. But that's just, I get fired up about this kind of stuff because I see it happen every single year. I even remember I got questions last year after week 1, when Aaron Rodgers got hurt. I had multiple people ask me, I need to trade Garrett Wilson now because my contending team that I thought I was going to rely on Garrett Wilson on my contending team, and he's going to be trashed now because he has Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers is hurt. Should I trade Garrett Wilson for some terrible player and lose all this dynasty value? And I was like, no, do not do that. Same exact thing happened last year when Justin Jefferson got hurt like 8 weeks later. And people were then like, oh, well, I'm contending and I don't have Justin Jefferson now. Should I trade him away for some loser value trade just so I can get points back? No. So that's the stuff that gets me. And again, I'm sorry that you were on the receiving end of that, Mr. Mole, but you just happened to ask about it, and I just happened to have been thinking about this an hour and a half ago before the stream. To where you just got the brunt force of all of that, and I apologize. But that is the theory behind all of that, and why I would not do this. MDP, 1 quarterback, 12-team PPR. Would you rather have Garrett Wilson or Achane and Devontae Adams? Garrett Wilson. Unless this is redraft, then I would take Achane and Devontae. But in Dynasty, I would take Garrett Wilson. Because now we're in that time of year where I now have to ask myself if every single question is Dynasty or redraft. Because this is DLF, but people play redraft, of course. I play redraft. So Dynasty, Garrett Wilson, redraft, Achane and Adams. Brotherhood, 12-team Superflex, PPR, tight end premium. Should I just hold and then sell Bo or T-Law later, given that you have Bo, T-Law, and Caleb? Sorry, I need to take a drink after that whole entire tirade I just went on. And then I'll get why do you want to sell Nix and T-Law? I mean, I would want all three of these guys. This is in Superflex, this is fantastic because then you have two really young solid quarterbacks that I both think can produce really well in Trevor Lawrence and Caleb Williams. You have the upside shot on Bo Nix as your QB3. I guess I'm just confused as to why you would consider selling them. I think if you need to consider selling anybody, I think you should consider selling. See, this is where I don't know if I would have done the Jahmyr Gibbs trade looking at your roster now, because I think you need to trade Jahmyr Gibbs for a wide receiver to stabilize your wide receiver room. Because I don't think that you're a contender this year. And then you just traded away 2 first-round picks and Jalen Polk for a running back that I think is not going to help you. So if I were you, I would trade Jahmyr Gibbs for a wide receiver. And then I would be trying to sell DeAndre Hopkins as soon as you can. If Chase Brown ever does anything, sell him. Deontay can be sold once he starts producing, and just get better. Move your running backs over to wide receiver and keep Trevor Lawrence and Bo Nix. That's how I'd go about it. Hey, Caleb, what's up, man? How does your Penn State loving self feel about the Dotson trade? Sorry if you already hit on it. No, we talked about this last week, Caleb. No, I'm just I still don't understand it. I don't know what happened to Jahan Dotson that now all of a sudden he's bad. So I don't understand why Washington traded him. Obviously Philly saw enough in him that they traded away a third. Now they got like a fifth back, but I mean they gave up a third, so that's not insignificant. And but at the same time, I think that he's dead in Philadelphia, so it kind of sucks all the way around. I just don't understand it. And I want an explanation, but nobody seems to be giving me one, so I'm sad. Mark, everyone is selling on Kyren Williams because of the punt returning. Is it crazy to go after him like paying a second in Dynasty? Is that an overpay at this point with what we know? I'd pay a first for Kyren Williams in Dynasty. Getting him for a second is absolutely insane. The whole punt returning thing is massively overblown. I have a video coming out today on the 4for4 channel where I discussed the Kyren Williams stuff. Did you know, fun fact, Kyren Williams punt returned last year. He had 12 punt returns last year, or 11 or 12 punt returns last year. He actually returned 3 of them and fair caught the other 8 or 9. So he was a punt returner last year for the first 3 weeks of the season while he was stealing away the starting role from Cam Akers. And if you actually watch the press conference, or not really a press conference, but if you actually watch the video when McVay says this, you will hear how much that he loves Kyren Williams because he wants to get the ball in Kyren Williams' hands more during the games. And he even says the reason why they're comfortable doing this with him in the punt return game is that they have Blake Corum and Ronnie Rivers that can spell Kyren if needed. He literally says if needed, which makes me believe that Kyron Williams is the workhorse. Blake Corum is not an issue until Kyron gets hurt. But as long as Kyron's healthy, he's the workhorse, and I don't care about him returning punts. I don't care that he's back there to fair catch the ball 80% of the time. Maybe they just put him back there because they trust him to catch it. Like you don't got to return it, Kyron. Just go back there, catch it. You're not going to fumble it. You're good. That's it. So I think that the whole punt returning thing is a massively overblown with how that affects his value. Joe's in the chat. What's up, my man? Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Drake, what are we thinking about this team? Mahomes, Bijan, Henry. You need, from a dynasty standpoint, I actually really like this. I think that you can compete. You need Pickens to actually break out. I think that Pickens is going to break out this year, but you need that to happen in order to actually compete. Reed is pretty solid. Devonta Smith is really good. He's like a really good wide receiver too. Obviously, you can be carried by Bijan and Javonte. Andrews and Mahomes are great. I don't like Zamir White. I'd be trading him. But I think this is a B. I'd give it a B minus. Because there are pieces here that I love, and then there are other pieces that I don't like. So it's kind of like right in the middle. I don't know if you're ultimately a contender this year, but you have the ability to potentially be. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. What about if it's across positions? I think the theory still holds true that, again, the bottom line for that is that one start sit decision does not influence your end result of a matchup being a win or a loss as much as people think it does. And so if you just look at this from a flex standpoint, so if you trade a running back for a wide receiver or vice versa, and then you throw them into your flex, it still is going to be the exact same outcome. So I don't think it really matters if it's within positions or across positions. I think at the end of the day, it still just comes down to the fact that people really overvalue how much of an effect one start sit decision has on their roster or on their starting lineup, especially if you are starting 10 or 11 people. If you start 8, then you start to get a little bit more into it. But when you start, that many players, 9, 10, 11, especially, one start sit decision and then one, Olave versus Cup, like that decision is meaningless. So take the player that has the exponentially more dynasty value. And there's also the upside that, like how Pure MT has it, where Olave might just outscore Cooper Kupp this year. And if that were to happen, then that trade is detrimental because now Olave is a top 10 dynasty wide receiver with a massive amount of value. And Cooper Kupp is a 31-year-old wide receiver aging out and coming off of a not so great, like he still could be a wide receiver too, but that's fine. But there are a bunch of wide receiver twos at his age or around his age or even younger, to where now Cooper Kupp isn't even like the value around Kupp right now is what he can do for you from a production standpoint. If he's not producing at an elite standpoint, his value is going to drop. Look at DeAndre Hopkins right now. His value is plummeted. Tyler Lockett right now, his value is plummeted. So that's like, this is uber worst case scenario where if Olave does outscore Kupp and it's by a pretty decent margin, Olave's value is going to skyrocket. Kupp's value is going to plummet. And that trade is going to look even worse a year from now, let alone the fact that you might have, that you might not actually be as much of a contender. You probably wouldn't be a contender if Cooper Kupp didn't actually produce at that level. A trade would look just absolutely horrible. So that's why you don't make trades like that. And especially don't make trades like that now before the season starts. Theo traded Marvin Harrison Jr. and 2 mid to late firsts and a late first for JJ Nico in a second. Holy crap. Man, that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of first round picks. I think it's fine. Honestly, I think this is a win on both sides. Because I completely see it from both sides. Where if you believe that Marvin Harrison Jr. and Justin Jefferson are a lot closer than people think, or even if they're in the same tier, then I think trading Justin Jefferson for Marv and a first is solid. So then it's 2 firsts for Nico and a second, which I also think is pretty on point for his value. So it works out, I think, on both sides. That obviously getting Justin Jefferson and Nico, I think, is fantastic. But from the other side, you got Marvin and 3 firsts, I think, is also fantastic. So I think this works on both ends. 1 second, Philip. We are talking a lot today. Oh my gosh. I didn't even see this. I'm so sorry. Dole Guitar 7888 with a $2 super chat. Can you help me with my lineup? I absolutely can. I didn't even see that super chat. I am so sorry, my man. So I'm trying to see if you have. Don't throw another super chat in here. And yes, I can definitely help you with your lineup. I'm sorry, I just now saw this. It didn't pop up, and then I had to get down to where I was scrolling for it. Oh, Marvin and 2 first. Okay, now that is better. That I understand a lot more. So Marvin Harrison and 2 first-round picks for JJ and Nico in a second. I like that a lot more. That is a W for you. That's W for sure. All right. Philip, give Caleb and Olave for Lamar and Javonte. No other running back available due to format. And this is the standard league where your team is insane. Man, I really wish Javonte was a better running back. I don't mind it. I have to do every single time I have to count because it's start 9, so I have to count this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9. I think I'm okay doing this. Again, I like it on both sides. I completely understand both sides of this. Getting Javonte as an RB3 would be really, really good. And then obviously you get the upgrade from Caleb to Lamar for the Lamar Kyler would be insane. I'd do this. I would do it. Give me Lamar and Javonte Williams. Raven show, yo. Zeke, Corum, Spears, or Algier for your RB4. You have Gibbs, Connor, and Singletary. I would take. So out of this group, I would take Tyjae Spears. He has the potential to actually be valuable without a starter going down. Zeke does too, but I think Spears has a much higher ceiling. But I would go Spears, Corum, Zeke, Algier would be how I would rank these 4. So give me Spears out of all these guys. Brian Flowers or Jackson Smith and Jigba. I would take Flowers for redraft, JSN for Dynasty. But you could probably end up trading Flowers for JSN Plus right now. But yeah. No, I don't want to play on Sleeper. Don't want to play on Sleeper. Who do you think will emerge as the wide receiver 1 in the Bills? I ended up taking Keon Coleman, and then I saw that Stephanie of ESPN is big on Addison. What are your thoughts on the wide receivers on the Colts? I hope that Keon Coleman can be the wide receiver 1. His prospect profile has a bunch of red flags in it, though, so it's kind of iffy. But if there's any team that can do it, I think it's Buffalo without Diggs with Josh Allen. So hopefully, I think Curtis Samuel has the highest probability of being the most productive for fantasy this year, but I'm hoping that Keon Coleman can win that job as we go along his career. And he's not just like Terrace Marshall or Jonathan Mingo or Laquan Treadwell or somebody like that, you know. And then as for the Colts wide receivers, I do think that Adonai is going to be the wide receiver 2. I think that he has a fantastic opportunity right now with Josh Downs injured. Oh, there's something in my eye. To be, to solidify himself as the wide receiver 2. He is 100% better than Alec Pierce. Pittman obviously is going to be the one when Josh Downs comes back. That target share is going to be, there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed, but I think Adonai has a really good opportunity right now to be the wide receiver 2, and I think he fits well with Anthony Richardson too. So I like him. That's why I like him more than Ricky Pearsall. In terms of like rookies from this class who have the ability to maybe make an impact on their team, I would prefer Addison. But I like Keon Coleman over Mitchell too, because I think that he has the highest upside and a path to being the direct wide receiver one for the team. Christian, thoughts on this super team looking to improve? I honestly, I don't know where to improve it. Your team is just too good. uh what the heck, man? How do you improve this team? Maybe you really the way to improve this team would be if you could you trade Waddle and Ayuk for Amon Ra and something else that's really good. So like let's see. I'm assuming this is Dynasty, by the way, because this would be an insane redraft team. We're gonna type in Amon Ra and we're gonna type in Waddle and Ayuk. So according to our trade calculator, you could trade Jalen Waddle and Brandon Ayuk for Amon-Ra St. Brown and George Pickens or T. Higgins or Jonathan Brooks or Kenneth Walker or anything like that. If you replace him with CD Lamb, you're kind of in that same range as well. So that would be the ultimate way to really improve your team dramatically is to just like go up and get, because you already have three of the top 3 dynasty running backs and you have ETN who's like RB6. You have a top 4 dynasty wide receiver, but then your other wide receivers are in that like borderline wide receiver 1 range. So if you could trade both Waddle and Ayuk to get another top 5 guy in Lamb or Jefferson or Amon-Ra, and you get another, top 24 wide receiver to do that too, that's how you do it. Your team's insane. I don't know if it necessarily matters though. Would you trade 2 firsts for AJ Brown in a 1 quarterback league? 100%. It's a very easy question, so I appreciate that. Redraft 12 team PPR is Achane, Devonta Zay for Pacheco and Nico Fair. I got the 2 players on the right. I would take. Ooh. I really like Achane. I don't like Devonta Smith or Zay Flowers in comparison to Nico. I don't really like Zay all that much for redraft. Achane has a lot of upside though, so I 100% get that. But I think I would try to do something. Pacheco is your only good running back, but you have a lot of wide receivers. Well, if you have a lot of wide receivers, then you're adding Devonta. Now I want Pacheco and Nico now. Because if you have a lot of wide receivers, then you're going to add Devonta and Zay, unless that's a different Devonta. But I'm assuming that's Devonta Smith or Adams. I still want Pacheco and Nico. How do you feel about Christian Watson? Another Dragon Ball Z. We had Goku in here earlier. I like Watson at his current cost this year. I've seen that he is being valued less than Jayden Reed, which I understand. But I also think that Christian Watson has the upside to be the wide receiver 1 on the Packers this year and be the most productive guy. Hopefully he's able to stay healthy with this whole hamstring science stuff that he was doing all year to get his leg muscles more proportional, I guess. I don't know if that was the right description for that. But I guess the muscle mass was a big difference between his 2 thighs and his hamstrings that was causing a major issue, and apparently he closed the gap. Anyway, so hopefully if he's able to stay healthy, I like him more than Jayden Reed, and I especially like him more because he's going cheaper than Jayden Reed. So I feel solid about it. I'd be willing to pay a 2nd round pick just for the upside of Christian Watson. I think that he's a really good redraft pick this year in like the 7th or 8th round. So I'm not going to say that I'm in on Christian Watson, but I like the value for the upside that he presents. Plus, on top of what you're talking about with Olave versus Cup, who else is there really to throw to in New Orleans? Oh, hey, appreciate it. All right, so I got a Striker just sent me a message on Discord saying that Dull Guitar is back in here. I'm so sorry, man. I have done horribly wrong by you. um, so let's get into it because Joe, you can wait for a minute. You understand. All right. I was trying to check the bottom of this, but then I got sidetracked. So I'm so sorry, Dull Guitar, because I missed your super chat. Then it took me 8 minutes just to find this. So I apologize. Thank you, Striker. Uh yeah. He understands. Um Start 9, quarterback 1 Hurts, RB 1 and 2, JT Montgomery, wide receiver 1 and 2, Puka Amon-Ra, tight end 1 Kittle. Have to start 3, flex, Rice, Olave, Higgins, Dell. Rookie draft is Monday. What trades would you make? Fantastic. So I really like your team overall. Your team is fantastic. Puka and Amon-Ra at wide receiver is amazing. Hurts is your QB1, amazing. Now, the one question, so you said it's to start 9, but I'm assuming by you just saying that your QB1 is Hurts and not listing anybody else that this is a one quarterback league. Um, so with it being a one quarterback league, you are then adding Marvin Harrison Jr. and Romo Dunze to this team, assuming 102 goes neighbors. So that's insane. 107 could potentially be I mean, it's essentially guaranteed. 107 is guaranteed to be one of Bowers, Brooks, BTJ, or Worthy. So that's also insane. Um, you have a phenomenal team, my dude. This is absolutely amazing. The one thing that I think is a glaring need compared to the rest of your roster overall is Kittle. Um, that not to say that he's bad as your tight end 1. He's definitely an every week starter. I like it, but that's the one spot where I feel like you could upgrade. RB2 is you could upgrade off of Dave Montgomery. But if you end up getting Jonathan Brooks at the 107, then that's having Montgomery is great as like your RB3 for the future, RB2 for the now, while Brooks is getting healthy. So Kittle is really the upgrade that you need here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right. So I think if it were me, I think I would probably try to see if I could grab, if you could trade like Tank Dell for, oh, can't get Laporta and McBride. What tight end should I target? That's what I was just thinking of. I was thinking of Kyle Pitts as a tight end target. I really, really like someone wants Tank Dell. So the guy who wants Tank Dell, what's his roster look like? Because maybe we can work something out and see what's going on. Kyle Pitts and Mark Andrews are like my two go-to tight ends for this year. I think that Kyle Pitts is set up to have his breakout season this year with Kirk Cousins. I didn't think Rondale Moore was going to be any impact whatsoever, but without Rondale Moore, that kind of opens up the target share a little bit more. Brand new offense as well coming from the McVay system. So I think that just all things are a go for Kyle Pitts this year, that I'm in on him, and especially the fact that this is the cheapest that he's ever been in his career. So I like it from that standpoint. Andrews, I think, is also good because I feel like he's just a safety net for Lamar Jackson and has been an elite guy. Hopefully he comes at Harbaugh said that he's not worried about the injury or whatever. He still had this injury from the car accident from a couple weeks ago, but Harbaugh didn't seem worried about it. So I don't feel like I'm worried about it either. This I don't disagree with either. This is kind of what I was going through in my head for that trade. Philip, was the difference between Olave and Javonte. So I get it, but also I understand if running backs are a little bit harder to acquire, and getting Lamar Jackson is never a bad thing. I'm also lower on Olave than most people, so I feel like that kind of comes into it a little bit for me. Uh, but yeah, hopefully, what I'm waiting for is I'm waiting to see if Dole Guitar, if he has. Yeah, here we go. I was waiting for the roster. Jaden Reed, Keenan Allen, David Njoku, Jake Ferguson. Cooper Kupp, Michael Pittman. Interesting. Okay, so he wants Tank Dell. All right, so here's a possibility. And this is banking on dynasty value, not like him actually having any thoughts on production this year. The first trade that came to my mind was trading Tank Dell for Cooper Kupp and Jake Ferguson. That was the first thing that came, and again, that is entirely predicated on dynasty value. He might not go for it because he might view Cooper Kupp as a production asset this year, and I get it, especially because he also has Kamara and Pollard and Jones and Keenan and Pittman, so he might be leaning more towards competing this year and doesn't want to give up Kupp. But if he also wants Tank Dell, I would go for Cooper Kupp and Jake Ferguson. And if you had like Tank Dell and a third for Cooper Kupp and Jake Ferguson, I'd shoot for that. So then that gives you. I'm really high on Jake Ferguson. I think that he could be just as much of a starter as George Kittle this year, especially with Brandon Ayuk re-signing and rejoining the team. You might actually start Ferguson more than Kittle this year, and it gives you a upside shot on Cooper Kupp, to where now you have Kupp and Olave to appease everybody else talking about both one versus the other. You have both of them now. Just to tie it into everything else. I would also I'm not against trading like Tank Dell for Kyle Pitts. If you could trade, maybe you could trade Olave for Kyle Pitts and I don't know, Brian Thomas Jr. or something like that. Like you could bump down from Chris Olave and get a more elite tight end, and you still get like a solid wide receiver on top of that. You won't be able to trade for BTJ, but like a player like in that range because you don't have your rookie draft yet. Olave for Pitts and JSN or Flowers. From that standpoint, that's not bad. So that Kamara and Kupp. So you trade Tank Dell for Kamara. I mean, I would do that too, but I feel like I think Jake Ferguson might be an easier swing to have him accept. But I don't mind that either. I'd even do Kupp and Pollard. I'm a Pollard fan. And I would take Jordan Addison over Keon Coleman in Dynasty just because we've seen Addison do it so far. So I'd still prefer Addison, but if it's Keon in a second, I would probably do that. So yeah, I'm glad this is like a good way to kind of end out the weekend with end out the show with helping out Dull Guitar here. So how's all that feel? I mean, because your team is fantastic. Hurts, JT, Monty, Puka, Amon-Ra. You're going to get Marvin Harrison Jr. to add to that too. You also have Rashee Rice, Chris Olave, T. Higgins, Tank Dell, and you're going to get Rome Odunze at the 103. That your roster is absolutely insane. It's just how can we get these little kind of like micro moves to help position you in a better direction? Maybe it is trading Tank Dell for Kupp and Ferguson or Kupp and Kamara or something like that. Or doing, like I said, like trading Olave for a Pitts and a something, or trade Higgins for Pitts and a something if you want to keep Olave. So yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, don't move the first if you don't have to. I mean, I love. Don't trade Marvin Harrison Jr. unless you're getting something amazing back. Don't trade Rome Odunze unless you're getting something amazing back. 107, like I said, is guaranteed to be one of Bowers, Brooks, BTJ, or Worthy. So that's also an amazing pick. I wouldn't really worry about trading that too because if you're able to trade, if you trade Dell for Pitts straight up, then you could replace Dell with Worthy or BTJ more or less, and you just got an upgrade at tight end potentially, or you could trade Dell for Andrews, and then or Dell for Kincaid even, and then you could replace Dell with one of the wide receivers at 107. Or yeah, like I just said, if Brooks is at 107, you'd still go Brooks. I feel like at that point, if Brooks is at 107, you're definitely taking him. But I feel like in order for Brooks to get there, BTJ and Worthy would have had to go ahead, or McConkey and Worthy would have had to go ahead. So the wide receivers at 107 for Brooks to have been there would have already, like, it's not as good of a wide receiver group. So yeah, my anticipation is that Brooks was already gone by that point. If you could trade, if you had to trade 107 for a running back, you're probably looking at like Pacheco, Walker. I mean, if you can snag ETN or Kyron for that, I think that would be fantastic. So those are options I think for the 1.07, but I wouldn't be looking to trade the other two. I think I want Ferguson and Kamara. If not, should I try Ferguson and a first? I would rather have a first round pick than Alvin Kamara. I don't know. I would trade Dell for Ferguson and a first. I'm fine with that. I don't know if I would trade Dell for Ferguson and Kamara though. One of them would each need to have been better. So that's where like it would be Cooper Kupp and Ferguson, or Michael Pittman and Ferguson. I don't think you're going to be able to do that. I think that he would prefer Pittman over Tank Dell. I would not do Jordan Addison and Ferguson. I wouldn't do Warren and Ferguson, Reed and Ferguson, Keenan and Ferguson. Doesn't add up in the calc. Yeah. Does Ferguson in the first would add up in a calc, I'd imagine. But Kamara probably doesn't. Because I would take the first over Kamara. So it's just. And Ferguson's probably like 80 points in the analyzer. Hit that like, y'all. Out here handing out his wisdom. I try to, man. Honestly, this is like a super enjoyable part of my week. I really, really enjoyed doing this with you guys. Especially this kind of stuff where we're like, I've been trying to find different ways to see if I could do like roster breakdowns or anything like that. Cause I really do enjoy just like sitting down with people and, talking through kind of stuff. Like almost like, if people watch like Caleb Hammer doing like a financial audit, like I want to do that, but for like Dynasty rosters. I don't got to yell at you and stuff like that, but this is the fun part, is like working out trades and talking through player values, and everybody's cool and awesome. Fergan at first is 469 and Dell is 511. So it kind of works. Brian, I did say I thought I answered this before. I said Flowers in redraft, but I would prefer JSN in Dynasty, because I think JSN has higher upside in Dynasty. So that's why I would prefer him. But I would take Flowers for 2024 for redraft. So yeah, in Dynasty, I would take JSN. But you might be able to trade, if you have Flowers right now, you might be able to trade him for JSN plus, possibly. So sorry if I thought maybe I answered it in my brain as I was scrolling through, but yeah, appreciate you, my man. Thank you for actually breaking it down. Of course, my man. Thank you for the $2 super chat again. Thank you for the, I guess for $4. Thank you for the support, my dude. So hopefully we got you there. Again, your roster is fantastic. So you definitely, I wouldn't feel like you have to make a move because your roster is really, really great. But if you can make kind of these, like, again, it's just like these micro moves. I feel like a lot of contenders feel like in order to maintain their competing window need to make some major big moves, and you really don't. It's really just like these these tiny little moves that you can make that, extend uh the age of your roster by an extra couple years, or maybe it is a tier down to a player of similar production, but then gives you that extra something that you can fill in somewhere else. So micro moves, smaller moves. That was the name of the game. I just dropped the Dynasty Alternatives video yesterday, so there wasn't anything major in there, but it was these small moves that they could pay out in the long run for you. So I appreciate it, man. I'm glad that I apologize for I missed your super chat early, and then it took me like 10 minutes to find your breakdown of your roster. So I apologize that you were probably just chilling in here waiting this whole time for me. So I appreciate you sticking around, and I'm glad that we were able to help you out with that. Tracks. I have Kirk, Deontay, Ridley, Godwin. Out of those four, who would you want to buy if you are competing? All right, cool. So to rank them, honestly, I think the real answer is whichever one is cheaper. That I think is the ultimate answer. So if you send out offers for all four of these guys, and the cost to acquire Godwin is 2 seconds, Ridley is a second and a third, but it's just 1 second for Kirk and Deontay, then I'm tossing out Ridley. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, for me, whoever's cheaper, if you're talking through different trades with all these guys for these four, that is the right answer for me. If I had to rank them, I would go I would, man. I think Ridley is last for me. I know the ballers really, really like Calvin Ridley for 2024 because of the potential upside for Will Levis in a much more passing friendly offense with the coach coming from Cincy, Callahan. Um, but I feel like he's last on this list. He's also the oldest, so there's that too. I think if I had to rank these, I would go Godwin, Deontay. No. Yeah. Godwin, Deontay, Kirk, Ridley, I think would be my ranking of these four. But again, at the end of the day, if one of these guys just ends up being cheaper than all of them, then just give me that one. So, yeah. You want Dell gone because my wide receivers are stacked and still getting, yeah, that's insane. But again, don't feel like you have to make a Tank Dell move because it's still going to be great to hold on to Tank Dell. So, but if Tank Dell is quote unquote expendable for this roster, which I think he is with you getting Marvin Rome, then those are the avenues that you can get. You can get another running back and a tight end, or a tight end and a first, or another wide receiver and a running back, or another just elite tight end at the end of the day for Tank Dell straight up. And then you're replacing your wide receivers with Marvin and Odunze. Bulk Bogan with the Laporta avatar. 12-team Superflex start 11. Looking to move my QB3 Goff. What's a good wide receiver to target? Interesting. Who are your top two quarterbacks, might I ask? If Goff is expendable for you as your QB3. Do you have another QB4 is my second question. Do you have somebody that's startable behind Jared Goff that is then going to be replacing your QB3 or Hurts and Richardson? Okay. So do you have another QB4? No QB4. Okay. Well, so according to our trade analyzer, which more or less, I feel like these are a little higher than where I was thinking, but I was pleasantly surprised by where this was. Straight up, you could probably look to trade Jared Goff for you're in the Odunze, Ayuk, Waddle, Nico, London kind of range of wide receiver straight up for Jared Goff. So I feel like that's like part one of this answer. Part two would be something that I would probably be looking to do more was if you went down to a quarterback like Bo Nix, then you could add a You could add a wide receiver like Xavier Worthy or Debo Samuel, um, or Brian Thomas Jr. or George Pickens, somebody in that kind of a range of wide receiver, and you still have a backup QB3. That might be the direction that I would be looking at going. Again, it doesn't have to be Bo Nix. Maybe it's Bryce Young. Maybe it's Will Levis. Maybe it's Drake May. But an upside shot on a QB3. It could even be like Aaron Rodgers, But I like the younger guys because they give you some potential longevity and value and production upside as well. So I think that's probably again, if you just wanted to, if at the end of the day you wanted to just trade Jared Goff straight up for a wide receiver, I'd be looking in that Ayuk, Waddle, Nico range. But if you wanted to tier down to still have a QB3, I think that you could tier down to one of these upside young guys and still get like a Pickens, BTJ, Debo, Worthy, maybe it's Cooper Cup kind of player back, Big fan of Nico was thinking the same as you of keeping a QB3 while getting something with it. Yeah. I'm not really opposed to either direction. I feel like I lean towards going the QB3 route, but I mean, Goff is a phenomenal quarterback this year. You might honestly be surprised how often you start Goff compared to Richardson or Hurts, especially if Richardson is kind of reeling from the injury. Dancy, start 10 Superflex. Any suggestions with this roster? You were top 3 last year. Looks pretty solid. You were top 3 without Anthony Richardson. That's impressive. But I get it. And you were top 3 without Justin Jefferson for a large part of the year too. ETN and James Cook as well. Okay, so that's significant because I was looking at your running backs and I was like, but then you have ETN and James Cook, so that works. Wide receivers are great. Again, I'm not a huge fan of Olave, but as your wide receiver 3, 4, 5 compared to what, depending on what DJ Moore and Rashee Rice do, that's not bad. Richardson and Purdy are great. Darnold as your QB3 is great. Then you get whoever the Raiders starting quarterback is. I like that. ETN and James Cook to go with Tyjae Spears, James Conner for production, Zach Moss. I don't know who your tight end is, but you're looking pretty solid. I think if I were to try to do anything, I'd probably start 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So Jacoby Myers is pretty expendable here. I think I would probably try to move Jacoby for another running back. It could, let me see. Because I don't, you're in trouble if you have to start Jacoby Myers this year, basically, over any of those other wide receivers that you have. So because of that, I think I would try to move Jacoby Myers for a running back that you might have a shot of actually starting this year, especially with, I just love rostering handcuffs in general. But if you could trade, this is just according to ADP, but Jacoby Myers is in the range of guys like Jalen Wright and my guy Ray Davis is in there. Tyler Algier. I don't think you probably can't get like Corum or anybody like that, but if you could trade Jacoby Myers for Marshawn Lloyd now is another good one too. Like one of those guys I feel like could give you, and if you target specifically like one of those rookies like a Corum or maybe it's Zach Charbonnet, you probably have to add Myers to get both of those guys. But if it ends up being Wright or Davis or Marshawn Lloyd, or maybe it's like Jordan Mason or somebody like that, or maybe it's even like Rico Dowdle, or Ty Chandler plus. I think that would give you a running back that gives you a shot of actually being a startable asset this year, because you're probably never going to start Jacoby Myers ever. And ideally, you're never starting that other running back, but running backs get hurt all the time. ETN, James Cook, James Conner. ETN's missed time. James Conner will most definitely probably miss time. James Cook may miss time. And maybe you want Ray Davis to be the handcuff with James Cook, or, Tyjae Spears is good too. Damian Pierce is really disgusting right now. Might not even be the RB2. and the upside shot of what is Zach Moss. But if you can go get another running back, I feel like that would increase my confidence in your longevity for the year and potentially give you a player that you can toss into your starting lineup as a spot start at the running back position more than any of these other wide receivers, with more than starting Jacoby over any of these wide receivers. So I think if you're starting Jacoby at any point this year, something really drastic has happened for your wide receivers. But if you start a handcuff running back, that's just a normal week by week. That's just week 8. You just start a handcuff running back by week 8, totally normal, and it extends your championship window for this year. No tight end league, weird format. They think having a tight end is a disadvantage unless you have one of the top. Well, interesting. So I would probably look at handcuff running backs then for Jacoby. That'd be my. If you wanted to, you could probably try to upgrade Purdy with one of your wide receivers too. Like if it was like, or maybe it's like Purdy and Tyjae Spears, and you can move up and get Dak or Kyler or somebody like that. I don't know. Just spitballing that one too. I wouldn't be worried about it, but Jacoby feels expendable here. Jacob, thoughts on Achane this year? I fear a 3-headed attack. I think Devon Achane is going to absolutely explode. You're welcome, Dancy. Yeah, I think Achane is absolutely going to explode. I talked about him in a video for 444, multiple videos for 444. I talked about him in the players skyrocketing up my rankings video on this channel a couple weeks ago. I'm not worried about the three. Ooh, Jesus. I just kicked my desk. I'm not worried about a 3-headed attack. There is a bunch of data out there that shows that when players are very efficient, that usually leads to more volume. And usually because of that more volume, their efficiency drops. So I'm not expecting Achane to average 7 yards a carry and score a touchdown every 3 touches or anything like ridiculous like he did last year. But generally, when a player is that talented, that leads to them getting the ball more. With Raheem Mostert getting up there in age, he also hasn't been the super healthiest in his entire career. He's managed to play 16 last year, but prior to that, he was injury prone in San Fran. I think he was even injury prone 2 years ago with Jeff Wilson. I could be wrong. But yeah, he just happened to play 16 last year. But what happens one year doesn't necessarily mean it can happen the next year. Same with Achane, just in reverse, where just because he was hurt last year doesn't mean he's going to get hurt significantly this year either. And I think Jalen Wright is the ultimate replacement for Raheem Mostert. So I think Devon Achane is going to increase in volume this year. I saw there was a beat reporter speculation because the Dolphins only have technically 5 wide receivers on their roster, really technically 4. I don't even know who the 5th one is. But there was a beat reporter speculation that the reason they did that is because they were going to have Achane out on the field with Raheem Mostert, and they were going to use Achane a little bit more in the receiving game too. So, yeah. As I say that, I just read that, and that's how it is. That's just me. I don't know. I don't even know what to say to respond to that because I do. It's true, but whatever. It's like whenever people comment on the trade show about Russ painting his nails, I'm just like, okay, why do you care? Sorry, that completely threw me off. I think Achane is going to be phenomenal. They ran Achane outside last week. Yeah, see, he's going to be, and they're just going to do that more in season. Achane is going to be phenomenal. Startup draft, I had the 105, traded 105 and 11 for 210 and 303. And what? That is insane. See, this is how you build these monsters. Apparently, what we all need to do is the people that are asking how to find leagues is we need to find whoever Philip is playing with and just get in leagues with them. Don't get in a league with Philip because Philip was going to house you. But sorry, I'm trying not to cackle. But find who Philip is playing with and playing leagues with them because apparently Philip is just really good at finding these leagues. Or he's just really good himself. I think Philip is just really good. You're just phenomenal, dude. That trade is magnificent. So you're going to get a lot of really, really good players with 6 picks in the first 4 rounds. Sheesh. You have 6 top 50 picks. Yeah. You won your league. What is the price check on Justin Jefferson in a 2014 2-copy PPR 1.75? So this is our format for our trade show listener league. And the price check would be what it's always been, 4 first-round picks. Philip, is there a big difference between 0.5 and 0.75? Slightly, yes. I feel like 0.5 just doesn't really do enough. I think 0.75 is where it really starts to make a difference. And then a full extra point per PPR is a big time jump. But in just like a normal 0.5 tight end premium, I'm really not upgrading tight ends all that much. Like I'm not like going out of my way to draft a guy a whole round ahead of where he normally would be in a non-tight end premium just because of the extra 0.5. But if you are creating a new league, I would cast my vote for the 0.75 instead, because that I feel like would make me value tight ends much more than non-tight end premium and more than a 0.5 for sure. So it's not a major difference, but at the end of the year, it is a semi decent gap between 0.5 and 0.75 in both value and production. Do you have Javonte or Zamir in the first week of fantasy? I have Javonte in a couple of leagues. I do not have Zamir. I'm assuming I don't have Zamir anywhere because I don't like Zamir. From a start sit standpoint, I would rather start Javonte. Although Zamir has a pretty good matchup against the Chargers. I haven't honestly even looked at matchups for next week. Oh, they play Seattle. Oh, that's right. I would rather have Javonte than Zamir for a start sit. I like Javonte a lot. I think that he's going to do really well this year. And I just don't like Zamir. So it is what it is. All right. Almost 2 hours of my cackling after everything I say. And we are at the end of the questions. So I haven't done this. I hadn't had to do this yet today, but I guess final call for any questions. I'll buy some time. I'll drink some more water. But if not, we'll call it a day. We'll call it a Labor Day weekend. Oh, by the way, for anybody out there that has the Fantasy Life app, if you don't have the Fantasy Life app, you need to download it. But we have a big time announcement coming for the FLA app, I believe this weekend. And I think that's all I can say about it. That's at least what's on Twitter. I don't think I can say anything more about it. I made promo videos for it, so there's that. But oh, sorry, I cackled. I can't do that. My bad. But it's gonna be a good one. If you don't have the Fantasy Life app or don't even know what it is, it's not like the Matthew Barry Fantasy Life. I don't know what the difference is or why, but anyway, the Fantasy Life app is my go-to for news and information. It is way faster on alerts than Sleeper and Bleacher Report and ESPN and anything like that. So that's a one for downloading FLA, but it's also, there's forums in there and like a hub to ask questions. And then we have a pretty big announcement coming, I believe, over this weekend, if I'm not mistaken, for some more stuff. So download FLA, Fantasy Life app, iOS and Android. Joe, you're typing one heck of a question, my man. Philip, my man. Joe has Herbert, Daniels, Levis, Garrett Wilson, Flowers, JSN, Shakir, Christian Watson, and BTJ. Brooks and no one else but Warren really at running back. Who should I move to upgrade? Great question. So at the end of the day, you really know what my answer is for this. I'd be doing a 2-for-1 at the wide receiver spot. I'd be trading up from Flowers, JSN, and Watson, and even Shakir too. I think those four. I would keep BTJ. I'm willing to trade up if it gets me something that I think is phenomenal. But Flowers, JSN, Shakir, Watson, I would be trading up from. I'd be doing 2-for-1s with those guys. Then just take this team into 2025. Because you could probably trade Jalen Warren too. Although there is the possible upside that his value increases in the offseason if Najee doesn't resign and he's like the RB1 until the NFL draft. That's possible. Like kind of like 2025's version of what we hoped was going to happen with Tyjae Spears until they signed Tony Pollard. So there's that upside for Jalen Warren, but I think you could also probably sell him if you wanted to, if he was enough of a piece to upgrade one of these wide receivers. So if you did like Flowers and Warren for an upgrade and then traded JSN and Christian Watson for another upgrade, change your wide receiver room and then either see if you can compete this year or not. Possibly, probably not, because you don't really have any other running backs and Brooks is on PUP, but that's probably what I would be looking to do personally with this team. Trax, who's your favorite handcuffs for this year, and which one is the most likely to either rise to RB1 job or have an injury and be the starter? Ooh. So the best running backs handcuffs right now would be. I'm not listing this in any order. This is just kind of as it comes to my brain. Charbonnet, Corum, Jordan Mason, Marshawn Lloyd, Ty Chandler. Oh, Tyler Algier. In a similar price ranges, you get like Rico Dowdle, who has the ability to potentially rise to the RB1 job, like you said, like without injury. Jaleel McLaughlin is also in that range. I don't think that he could rise to RB1, nor is he really necessarily a handcuff. I think if Javonte got hurt, Estime would step in. But I think Jaleel McLaughlin offers a lot of upside standalone as like a 1B that could be like an RB2 for fantasy. Trey Sermon, I think, is a great handcuff right now too. Then you get into like the rookies like Will Shipley, Bucky Irving, Ray Davis, Braylon Allen. I didn't mention Jalen Wright, but like I said, like with Jalen Wright, I think that he is and is not a handcuff. I think Jalen Wright is a handcuff to Raheem Mostert. And I think he'd be valuable from that standpoint, but then also would then be good for 2025. It's like Trey Benson. Joe just mentioned Trey Benson. So, like kind of in that same regard that I think Jalen Wright and Trey Benson are handcuffs, quote unquote handcuffs now, but have the ability to be the RB1 in the future later, with James Conner leaving in free agency and Raheem Mostert potentially like aging out or leaving. I don't know what his contract situation is. Those are like the top handcuffs, I think. I'm trying to think if there's any more. P. Ryan apparently has become a handcuff for Pacheco. Tank Bigsby, I guess. Although I'm not all that intrigued by it. Those are basically that. I mean, that's like a decent. Oh, Chuba. Yeah. Same with like Jerome Ford. Chuba and Jerome Ford, but Chuba's a lot cheaper. I'm trying to see if I'm just missing anybody, but I mean, that's basically all of them. More or less to an extent. That's it. That's it. Your cackling is funny. You're doing great. Thank you, PJ. Checking back in as I had to hop into a meeting. Thanks for the review, and I agree with your approach to improving the team. Lost in the chip last year, but I am positioned to compete for years. You absolutely are. So I hope that you win the championship this year, and hopefully we're able to get there. The issue with your suggestion is the team I would have to trade with for a top wide receiver is ranked second with Lamb, JJ, and Amon-Ra. We won't trade. Oh, I don't blame him for trading away any of those guys. I feel like that I would just toss it out, just see what happens, because I feel like he has never been approached with like an actually good deal to trade any of those three. I understand why he wouldn't move any of them, but I would just see what happens. The worst he could say is no, go away, and then that would be your final answer. Christian joining in live for the first time. Welcome in. Welcome in. Contender with Saquon. No, you say to sell. Got an offer for a 25 first and second, but for some reason, it's so tough for me to pull the trigger because Contender with Saquon's potential. Joe said exactly. You throw enough at the wall, something's gonna stick. Christian. So the whole reason that I said to sell Saquon Barkley is as a contender, I think that you could position yourself to a safer asset that is equally as productive as Saquon Barkley, to move you off the risk of if Saquon were to get hurt again, and God forbid it's another, like if he were to be Nick Chubb and completely wreck his knee in week 2, his value would plummet. But if any of the other running backs in his kind of range, like if JT did that again, his value would go down for sure, but he could have the shot to rise back up because he's only 25. Same with ETN. Same with, if you bump up to Brees or Gibbs or Bijan or any of them. Sorry, this isn't real wood. I'll go knock on a door after this is wood. There you go. I apologize, but that's the risk that you're playing with Saquon. So that's why when I was saying to sell him, I was trying to sell him to a comparable alternative that is younger and less riskier. As a contender, I don't hate having Saquon Barkley, and I would not trade Saquon Barkley for just a first and a second. And I apologize. I didn't mean to do that to you either, Christian, as a contender. Saquon's going to be phenomenal. He's going to do exactly what he's doing in this picture, and he's going to jump over somebody every single week and be totally fine. But as a contender, that I would not trade Saquon for just a first and a second. I think that drops your compete ability. That's not a word, but and yeah, if you have CMC and Saquon, that's insane. It's those are two guys that, should anything major happen to them, they're going to plummet. And I would do the same thing. I would say the same thing about Saquon or about CMC as I am about Saquon, where if you can trade CMC over to Brees Hall or Bijan or even Gibbs, I would be exploring that. Same as I would with Saquon moving to JT or ETN or trading or adding something to go up and get Brees. I'd say the same thing about CMC, but at the same time, if both those guys are playing to the best of their abilities for 14, 15, 16 games out of the year, I mean, you won it 2 years ago. You're going to be back. You were in the ship last year. You're going to be back in the ship again this year. Both those guys do the same thing. So, that's the whole argument for me for selling Saquon. So I would not sell him for a first and a second. I want something with actual production coming back as a contender. Trax, would you trade Andrews and Zamir for Ingram and James Cook? Oh, I love Mark Andrews, but I hate Zamir White so much. This sucks. Your backup tight end is Ferguson. I'm keeping Mark Andrews personally. I'd be trying to sell Zamir White, but I want to hold on to Mark Andrews. I think that the gap between Andrews and Ingram is larger than what it was or would have been last year because Ingram's production spiked without Christian Kirk. So with Christian Kirk back, I'm a little hesitant about that. Um, I do like Cook a lot more than Zamir, though. It's not a bad deal on both sides. I feel like with you also having Jake Ferguson, you could have two tight ends to start every single week. I actually have a team. I have a dynasty team too that has Andrews and Ferguson, that exact 1-2 punch, and Dulcich is my 3. So I'm right there with you from that same standpoint. But I don't know if on that team, I don't think I would do this trade. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's been great. Ingram has been great, but I think last year the overproduction from last year was due to the fact that Christian Kirk was out. Who would you trade Zamir for? Because I need an RB2, RB3. So I would be trading Zamir for Javante. I would trade Zamir for David Montgomery. I would trade Zamir for over here. Just looking at ADP again. I mean, Zamir is RB25. Directly behind, 2 spots in front of him is David Montgomery. I would also trade him for Mixon if you can. I would trade him for Javante. I would trade him for Brian Robinson. Even James Conner. So those would be, I would basically pivot Zamir to any other running back that's in his value range. Captain Joe King, huge fan of the show, already a sub. Quick question. So I start Flowers against the Chiefs or McLaurin against Tampa Bay. I would, oh man. So I think I would start Zay Flowers against the Chiefs. Because I think Flowers' target share is semi-safe. McLaurin's is as well, but I'm thinking of this from like a safety standpoint. That we know what Flowers is. We know what he is with Zay Flowers. If Mark Andrews were to miss, this is an easy Zay Flowers as well too. I don't think Zay Flowers is gonna, or I don't think Andrews is gonna miss. But if that's the case, this is easy for Flowers. Me sitting McLaurin week 1 is more of I want to see what Daniels is than I want to see what McLaurin, just me not starting Terry McLaurin. So I feel like I'm more comfortable in Lamar Jackson than Jane Daniels right now in week 1. And it's also a primetime matchup. I'm not worried about the Thursday night because it's not, like week 10 Thursday night where we're worried about people coming off of a short week. This is night 1. It's primetime matchup. Should be a shootout. I'd rather start Zay Flowers this week because I think he's safer. My internet thing just popped up. Hopefully I might have cut out there for a second. Yeah, I would do Pollard too. I would trade Zamir for Pollard. Kevin, hey, I've been asking you about some contending now trades over the past month, and I pulled the trigger. Do you mind giving me a contender moves report card on 3 trades? Absolutely. Let's see. What do we got here? A 26th first for Rachaad White and a 26th third. I don't mind it. That's all right. Watson and Tillman for Kenneth Walker. I do like that one. McConkey for Christian Watson. I like that one. Oh, yeah. Trading Watson for Kenneth Walker when you already have Love, T-Law, and Knicks. Yeah, that's easy for sure. And then you go from McConkey to the upside shot on Christian Watson. I like it. You got Rachaad White. Overall, I think that the 3 trades in totality, I think work out really, really well. I'm still a little iffy on the 26 first one, but I think getting Rachaad White is still fine. But I really, really like the other 2. So I think you've positioned yourself pretty nicely just based on your quarterbacks and wide receivers. I don't know what your running backs look like, but yeah, I think that you did pretty solid on all 3 of these moves. Philip, Hurts and Andrews or Kyler and McBride contending. I would. Oh my. I think I'd take Hurts and Andrews because you just get the better quarterback, the slightly better quarterback. I love all four of these players. And there's not really like a major difference to me between any of the four. I think I would just take Hurts and Andrews. Um, but I don't mind either one of these sides. I think I just take Hurts and Andrews, or just keep whatever side that you have. Might be the easier answer. They're both great sides. Higgins and a mid 25 first, or Metcalf and Rashad White. Need a running back in a PPR league. 0.5 for 0.5 for rushing first downs, 1 point for receiving first downs. Interesting. Um, yeah, I would do this. I would take McBride and Rashad White for that. I don't love Rashad White, but I would take Metcalf over T Higgins. And so I would take a first. If it's a playoff contending first for Rashad White, that's not bad. And then there's still a little bit of leftover value from going from Higgins to Metcalf because you're winning that side, I think. So yeah, I would take Metcalf and Rashad White here. And especially with the extra point per rushing and receiving first downs, extra 0.5 and 1. Yeah. Yeah, I'll take Metcalf and Rashad White. Nice. All right. We have 100% crossed the 2-hour mark. And we have run out of questions. And now my son is crying. So I might have to go feed him. But I don't know what my wife's doing. Anyway. But yeah, this seems like a good place to start. Going for 2 hours now. The vocal cords are running dry. Great AMA. It's always a great AMA, especially in season. So we're going to be continuing to do the DLF AMA same time every Friday at noon Eastern time. I know last year I did a um uh sorry, I just got completely sidetracked because I got a notification for work for 4 for 4. Anyway, last year I did a show with John Paulson. So it was like a more start sit show. So we did that last year at 12 p.m. Eastern time, and that was kind of like the live stream in season. We are not going to be doing that this year. Paulson is going to be doing a live show at 12 Eastern time to discuss like matchups on the week, and it'll probably have some start sit stuff in there. So that left this time slot open for me to continue to do this in season as well. So I will still be continuing to do this in season, 12 p.m. Eastern time every Friday. You can ask start sits in there. I will just tell you up front that I feel like I'm not fantastic at start sit decisions. I will have Paulson's rankings up from 4for4. He's a very accurate ranker. So I can give you his answer as well, just based on what his rankings look like from 4for4. But yeah, we'll continue to be doing this every single Friday in season and at 12 p.m. Eastern time, same time as always. And that'll be our Friday AMA, while Paulson also does his on 4for4. So that's how it is. That's how we'll do it. On Rashad White, I've seen a lot of different takes on Bucky Irving. Some people think he's going to take work, and others think that Irving is not good. What's the official Addison DLF take? I do think that Bucky potentially can slide in and hurt Rashad White. That's why I'm kind of a little bit worried about White just overall, just because he was so reliant on his volume last year that any drop in that volume is not going to be good for him. I do think that Bucky gives them something a little extra that Rashad White doesn't. Maybe it's a little bit of extra efficiency or explosiveness while still offering receiving upside out of the backfield. So I'm a little iffy on Rashad White. I don't think he's a good pick in redraft this year. I've made a video on 4for4 talking about that I'm kind of out on him for redraft at his ADP. And I feel like he's a running back in Dynasty that I would like to move off of in either direction. I'd either like to upgrade from or tier down from, because I don't know if he's going to be all that different than a lot of other running backs right now. So that's kind of where I am with Rashad White. I still think he's going to be like a solid RB2, but he's being valued like his Dynasty ADP is RB13 right now, and that just feels really high. You know, like I'd rather just pay a little bit and move up to HN or ETN or go up and get Kyron or, you know, side graded Josh Jacobs or just drop down at the end of the day and go get Monty or Mixon or somebody, you know. Like, I feel like that's what I would be trying to do with Rachaad White. I think I'd still, um, I think I'd still take that. Like, I don't mind the Rachaad White thing for trading a first round pick, especially if it's late. Uh, and I don't mind like this Robert trade either. Like, I don't mind that because you're getting an upgrade from Higgins to Metcalf. I feel more confident in Metcalf, and you're paying a mid to late 25 first. So again, I don't hate those prices for Rachaad White. I'm not in love with them either, but I just Rachaad White in general just feels he just feels weird. He used to be an obvious trade high, but now feels like the community has settled into him. Yeah, that could be true too. So like his ADP could just be a little bit higher, just out of necessity for the running back position. But um, maybe the trade value doesn't necessarily reflect that. But it also, yeah, like you said, it could be a good time to sell because now people are looking at their dynasty leagues and you're thinking, oh, I need an RB. I need an RB2. I need to go pay for this guy. I need to go get that guy or something like that. Or I need to upgrade this running back because he's not that good. And yeah, Christian, you're right. He might be like it might be a good time to sell now because as people are preparing for the actual season and people kind of settled into him. He is definitely a better receiver than runner too. And that's where I think Bucky cuts into his work. Because I think Bucky offers something from the rushing side that White doesn't have. And Bucky is also a very good receiver too. So it's kind of I still think he's going to be a good RB2. I don't know if he's going to live up to his ADP in DLF in Dynasty or redraft is where I'm at. So, but all right. That is where we are going to end it then, over 2 hours. So yeah, same time next Friday for actual week 1, we'll be able to talk about the Ravens and Chiefs game. We'll have actual football. It's going to be fantastic. So all the way through the regular season, we'll be doing this stream every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern time. So appreciate you guys coming in, asking questions, hanging out for a couple hours. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a fantastic Labor Day weekend for anybody in the States. Hopefully you guys have off on Labor Day. You can enjoy it. Family, friends, food, all that fantastic stuff before we get into the grind of the actual NFL season. So exciting. But it's that time of year, man. It's the time of year. So awesome. Appreciate it, you guys. Thanks for hanging out. Have a fantastic weekend. And we will see you guys next Friday again for week 1. Let's do it. Later, guys.